Doesn't deregulation eventually lead to destroying the economy? Deregulation can lead to monopolization of industry or cost-cutting measures like using lower quality or lower safety ingredients in products. So it's viable to destroy much more than just the economy if greed goes unchecked. It's a myth that bureaucratic regulation of economies are necessary for them to run efficiently. Excessive regulation protects monopoly by raising the cost of entry into a market. It's no secret that large corporations play the regulation game for their advantage. Some people feel that the amount of regulation encourages consolidation and large too-big-to-fail companies. However, without some form of regulation, businesses will pollute, injure consumers, and commit fraud. History teaches that clearly. In early court cases fighting polluting industries, ordinary citizens were denied standing, leaving government as the only means to respond. Our regulatory system is prescriptive. It tells companies that if they follow certain rules, they are effectively immunized from most harms. This means companies can play the system to their advantage. Deregulation is fine if it reduces some of the regulatory burden and opens the market to startups without giving companies a free pass. Deregulation leads to feudalism. And we have proof of that in the era of the robber barons, which generated most of our regulation. Our country is a bunch of toddlers who refuse to be told to do the right thing for humanity and the greater good. Welcome to neoliberalism. It sucks here. Privatization, deregulation, defunding the public sphere, we've had basically 40 years straight of this. Wealth stratifies, social mobility dies, which makes class barriers insurmountable, and life generally gets worse for the majority of people, while getting really super awesome for a couple of people. It's crackhead economics. You've got no money and no crack, so you go hawk your TV to go buy some more crack, but then you smoke all the crack and now you've got no TV and no crack. Yes, but they don't care. They want to get rich now and don't care one iota for the future. Like most things involving incredibly complicated interconnected systems, it depends. What I have seen in my years on Earth is it becomes more like a pendulum. Too much regulation stifles growth. So in periods of low growth, deregulation often does spur growth. So do lower interest rates, then people run away with it when some big public mishap occurs and the pendulum swings back to harsh regulation, and so it goes. Yep. I'm begging both you and your family to stop seeing regulation as inherently good or bad. All regulations have some benefits and some costs, and some of them are net harmful while some of them are net helpful. Just as removing all regulations is a bad idea, so is adding more regulations without a purpose. You need to discuss the specific policies you're proposing and their effects. Deregulation is one of those topics that makes sense from all sides depending which way you look at it. Regulations that control the right to sell alcohol have kept new businesses from opening up in my hometown for the past 20 years. They have X licenses total. A new license doesn't get added into the available pool unless a business loses it. In this specific area, if you don't have a liquor license, you're not going to have a successful restaurant. In that case, people would love to see deregulation. Regulations also forced people to tap into the city's sewage in this same town. Before those regulations, you were allowed to continue dumping gray water, non-toilet waste water from laundry machines, sinks, disposals, etc. into the local river. After the regulations were passed, the river became open for actual recreational use and fishing because things weren't floating dead in it anymore. In that case, people would love to see regulations. It gets politically murky when we talk about deregulation depending on who's advocating for it. Who will it protects and champions vs who it actively harms changes on a case-to-case basis. To expect corporations to operate with any concern of the public's well-being unless forced by regulations is a joke. It's how you get the train derailment that poisoned that Ohio town. Not just that, it can cause some major health damage. Some regs for like railroads were removed prior to Ohio train wreck, which had safety reg for brakes, speed of weight, and certain toxic payloads, etc. Imagine planes not having to do costly replacements and checks from FAA guidance. Water plants having to increase costs from companies dumping toxic chemicals in areas and EPA can't stop them. Now you are drinking and breathing cancer. Saw a meme about rotting horse meat now being able to be sold as grade ground beef, which is scary. Edit. Fixed meme quote. Yes. Deregulation looks great on paper, it's unsustainable. Spot on, dude. The period of prosperity the US experienced in the mid-20th century was the direct result of regulations, strong union membership, and government investments in welfare and infrastructure. What we are seeing today is the culmination of over 40 years of dismantling that system, which benefited the middle class and mildly inconvenienced the upper class. Yes, it happens over and over again. It was the cause of the Great Depression, for God's sake. but of makes the couple dozen at the top richer at the cost of literally everyone else, and their voters are illiterate fucking hicks, so cracking a history book wouldn't help, so they keep doing it. Firstly, I can tell you one thing that everyone should know. Economics is guesswork. It's highly advanced, statistics and theorems and analysis based, but it's still guesswork. So anybody who tells you what will happen is a liar. They might tell you something which they think is likely to happen, but it's not a certainty. With that out of the way, onto the next part. Your assumption is that deregulation causes economic instability, but this is only true of regulations that exist to prevent that, like some banking regulations post-2008. Removing some environmental regulations on, for example, a coal mining company would probably cause a significant boon the local economy and not face long-term consequences for decades, and even then, those wouldn't be economic consequences. So no, deregulation doesn't cause economic collapse. It can cause negative effects and certainly will, but it happens because somebody believes the positive effects outweighs the negative. The reason deregulation fails is because the govt continues to pick sides. Govt regulations create monopolies of the biggest companies because they are the only ones that can afford to comply. When they deregulate, they don't give enough time for smaller operations to catch up, because when the giant monoliths start to fail, the govt steps and bails them out, installs regulations again, and again squashes the smaller competition that was causing them to fail. Yes, they think companies will be good. Aren't willing to harm billions of people to make a little more money. Every single regulation they want to repeal exists because people were killed.